Initially, I knew that I wanted to go back to grad school, so I started researching, and I ended up choosing the K-State program just for a variety of reasons. One, it was online, which made it very flexible for me to still have a full-time career, but it also provided the opportunity to come on campus and network and engage with my peers and with the faculty here as well. And also just wanted to stick with a university that had a strong reputation and especially had deep roots in agriculture.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse Senior Editor Phil Brasher, discussing the week that was, agriculturally speaking, in Washington, D.C. And in the week that was this week in Washington, D.C., a lot of the news involves Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue, first being a trip that he took to Capitol Hill on Tuesday, where he testified before the Senate Ag Appropriations Subcommittee. Some news came out of that in that he was saying, and we've been wondering this for a while, but he said officially on the record that he doesn't think he's going to get a lot of help at the Department of Agriculture in terms of sub-cabinet agency officials. He doesn't think he's going to get those folks before the end of the summer.
Right, and these names have been out there for a while. We reported them first over a month ago, back in May. Steve Sinskey for Deputy Secretary and a number of undersecretaries. Sonny Perdue says there's 6 nominees, potential nominees, none of them named yet, that are sitting, waiting to be approved. One of them, as we've reported, apparently is having some trouble just taking some time in terms of getting his personal business operation in order and properly separated and so forth. But he told these senators that Secretary Perdue told these senators that it's going to be after the August recess, in other words, September at the earliest, that he's going to have some help, some Senate confirmed people in place at USDA to make all the decisions that have to be made, a lot of political decisions.
And to be clear, this is not just a Department of Agriculture problem. I mean, I think this is something that's happening across the Trump administration. A lot of sub-cabinet folks that are not quite in place yet due to delays at some point in the process.
Right, but this is almost remarkable in that there's only a secretary at USDA. There's nobody underneath him who's been confirmed by the Senate. And a lot of the work gets done by the agencies is still getting done in terms of day-to-day operations. But when it comes to making political decisions about do you do this or do that, that really takes the political appointees who are accountable to the Senate to then advise the secretary, and that's what's missing. So, especially as we get into the Farm Bill, we're going to need some of these nominees there.
So I'd tell you to hold your breath for news on that development, but I don't think that'd be a sound move health-wise. I guess pay attention. We'll give you news when we get it, but it might be a little while, as Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue said this week. Some other comments that he made before the Senate Appropriations Ag Subcommittee was, of course, dealing with the president's budget, and we've seen him make similar comments on the House side, but he really expanded on some of those comments before the Senate this week. Really did not make a huge effort to defend a number of provisions in the Trump USDA budget.
No, and he really took the air out of the hearing as terms of the Democrats were concerned, in terms of he so quickly kept backing away from the biggest cuts in the Trump budget, including agricultural research, rural development, crop insurance, international food aid. One senator started to press him about the McGovern-Dole International School Feeding Program. Secretary Perdue very quickly sort of separated himself, disavowed that proposal to eliminate that program, and so they didn't even bring up Food for Peace, the big giant landmark program of international food aid, which the Trump budget also proposed to eliminate. So very almost remarkable that a cabinet secretary has essentially moved away from the biggest and most important cuts and proposals in a president's budget so quickly.
Right, and also keep in mind that EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt was before a House subcommittee on Thursday. Don't have a ton of details for you on that quite yet, but stay tuned to agripulse.com. We will have a write-up of that hearing coming for you here in the very near future. But want to wrap up with some other news involving Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue. Really, it was the newsmaker for us this week, I suppose. But he had the first hearing of this Agriculture and Rural Prosperity Task Force that was convened by executive order from President Trump. They had their first meeting at the Department of Agriculture Thursday morning. A wide array of cabinet officials were there, or representatives thereof. And Phil, this is really kind of the beginning of a process that is really supposed to be looking at agricultural regulations, not only in the Department of Agriculture, but across this wide swath of government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and agriculture, not just agricultural regulations, but whole areas of infrastructure and other areas. Secretary Perdue continually refers to it as a rural prosperity task force, and so there's a lot of discussion about broadband and so many other areas. No timetable, didn't give a timetable. He did talk to reporters afterwards and made clear that he expects the recommendations to have very clear goals and targets, measurable targets for improvement. So that'll be might be a little different than what we're used to in terms of these sorts of task force, which we've seen come and go before. So we'll be watching for that.
Yeah, we're still very, very early in that process. As we said, today was the
very first meeting.
Yeah, it was the very first meeting, and so there's obviously going to be some more news on that front. We would assume as they continue to meet and either both behind the scenes and out in the open in public. And so we'll be sure to keep you up to date on all the information that comes out of this and other future hearings of that task force. But that effort is underway. It was called for by the Trump administration shortly after Secretary Perdue was confirmed and sworn in as USDA's top ag official, and so we'll be sure to keep you up to date on that and other developments that come out of Washington, D.C. here in the coming weeks and months. But I think that's going to do it for this week. So for Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.